Welcome back to the Opposition Podcast, known by some as the Controlled Opposition Podcast. That probably has something to do with Rukshan's behaviours. Episode 16, Rukshan. Every time I walk in that door, I think, is he going to show up this week?
That's right, Avi. Episode 16. I look, Opposition Podcast, Controlled Opposition Podcast, right?
That's what we wanted to call it.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to call it originally. And I think a lot of people that might be watching might agree. It's a Controlled Opposition Podcast. I see in the comments sometimes. But look, that's not really what this is. This is the opposition because, you know, in our country, in our world, we're lacking a true opposition to many of the things which are happening. So on this platform, on our podcast, we hope to provide a bit of that opposition. But as always, guys, welcome to another episode. If you are writing comments, please put question. If you want to ask a question, that is, please write Q or question at the start of it and put it in so we can just search for it easier. If we do end up putting comments on the screen, depending on the way the conversation is going, and we'll try to bring that up. So just be mindful that if you do comments, you will, and we do put it on the screen, the image, your avatar will appear as well. But I think without further ado, we should introduce.
We definitely should. And just for those of you at home watching the comments, obviously at the moment the system's set up where you can comment through Facebook and YouTube on any of the pages that it's streaming on. In time, hopefully, all the other platforms will allow us to do it. And if you want to catch up with episodes of the Opposition Podcast, you can go to theopposition.show, or if that's confusing, it's www.theopposition.show. It's that fancy .show that tricks people.
That trips people out. Yeah. That's it.
So without further ado, we want to bring in and welcome to the podcast this week. he's known by a lot of the names. What was he? He was former Liberal MP.
Yep, former Liberal MP, and then
turned UAP.
Turned UAP candidate for the federal election.
ABC called him conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
I personally prefer king of the cookers or the head chef.
I think you had a very heated exchange as well with the personality on one of the Channel 9 Today show, maybe Natalie Barr or someone like, I can't remember the exact name, but he's well known throughout our country for lots of different reasons. But of course, today we got him on here to chat with us about another one of his particular subjects, which he has a lot of expertise in, and that is the AEC, the voice referendum. So I just want to welcome our guest today, Craig Kelly. Thanks for jumping on today, Craig.
Hey, no, great to be with you boys.
I think maybe just turn up his sound because he
how's that sound working at the moment?
I think it's okay.
Let us know in the comments if you want us to lift up Craig's sound. We'll get our technical support from Sri Lanka to take care of that.
I'll have a look at that now.
Craig, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. So I guess it's been a wild, certainly last week, especially with what's been happening with the AEC. They've been trending. The AEC has been trending on X, formerly Twitter, with your name. Now, why is that?
Well, the AEC's, it's the different standards the AEC have been applying. It's the double standards. But the AEC actually took me to court over my election signage at the last election. And when you compare what they did to me against what they're doing to the Yes campaign with these deceptive purple signs, it's really chalk and cheese. And it just shows the AEC are employing double standards. They're giving the Yes campaign a very light touch. And this is disappointing for the Australian community. We need the AEC to be above, question. We want to make sure whatever the result of a referendum or in a federal election is, that everyone is comfortable that that is the true result. The last thing we want is to see a situation like we've seen in the US where the result gets disputed. We want to make sure and you're not going to have that here while you see the AEC giving special favours to the Yes campaign.
For those people that haven't been following or paying attention, especially through the federal election where you did have your dispute with the AEC, can you run us through what happened and then compare it to what's happening now?
Now, the dispute I had with the AEC was over the font size of the authorisations on the bottom of your core flute sign. So the legislation says you've got to have an authorisation on it. So in my case, it was a sign that said Craig Kelly MP, and down the bottom it had authorised, in the very fine print you put down the bottom, authorised by Craig Kelly, my federal office address, which I think at the time was down in Sutherland. East Parade in Sutherland. That's what I had there. So my wording was correct. The question was the font size that I had used. Now, there was nowhere specific in the legislation that said what font size you had to use. Just it had to be legible from a distance that the sign was meant to be read from. Now, with your core flute signs, they can be read from many different distances. A distance is 1 metre away, so you can always walk up to my signs. Anyone with 20/20 vision can actually see the sign, the authorisation clearly down the bottom. But the AEC said, no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. So what they actually did to me, on election eve, at 7:30 p.m. on the Friday night before the election on the Saturday, the AEC went to the federal court, put in an application for an urgent interim hearing, which was started at 8:30 at night. So I'm sitting in my office. So those that are involved in election campaigns know how chaotic things are the night before the election, with people coming to pick up signs, and you're making sure you've got core flutes for each of your 42 booths in my electorate. Your how to vote cards are all organised. Your people that are manning your booths are all coordinated, and there's 1,001 things to do. Now the phone rings at 8:30. That's Clive Palmer on the phone to me. He goes, Craig, he says, mate, there's a bit of a problem. He says they're trying to stop you from campaigning tomorrow. You may not be able to campaign. He says there's a court case or something. And I thought it was one of Clive's bad jokes. And I've gone, yeah, sure,
Does
Clive, sure,
does
mate,
Clive
yeah,
make a lot of bad jokes? Because if that's the case, he could probably get a job on Rebel.
well, it's like everyone that knows, like those election campaigns, you're working basically 20 hours a day. You'll have a few hours sleep on the Friday night. You'll basically go until 6 o'clock in the evening, and then you'll collapse, sort of thing, right? So I'm sort of like trying to think, how many hours can I get? Maybe this is a bad joke because Clive's saying you don't have to campaign. I'm going, you beauty, Clive, I can stay at home and sleep in, right? And then so I just didn't think about it. And you got so many things happening. Then at 10:30 at night, he rings me and he says, "It's okay. We've won the case. You can campaign tomorrow." And I'm going, "Yeah, Clive. Yeah, sure. Okay, good joke. Because I sort of missed something, and I just forgot all about it." Now, after the election campaign, I went through the court documents, and what actually happened. The AEC went to court on that Friday night. The case started at the court started at 8:30 p.m. and finished at 10:30 p.m. And the AEC was seeking an injunction that would have required me to start at midnight that night to go around to each one of the 42 election booths in my electorate and remove my signs. Like, remove them, take them away, all 42, not within like a short proximity of the the booths or whatever. Remove them totally, and the distance they gave was 100 meters radius from the schools. Right? Now, luckily, the judge, and they did that on the basis of one blurry photograph, which the judge says in the judgment from 50 meters away, where they said they can't see the authorization clearly. So it's not as though they had they didn't even have a actual core flute with them in the courtroom. They had a blurry photograph, which anyone knows at photography, you can't pick up, 8-point font printed on a sign or a letter, from 50 meters away. So it was just pathetic, absolutely pathetic case. So we won that case. We had costs awarded to us. And I just thought the AEC were effectively trying to take me out from campaigning on election day and preventing me from having my signs out on the booths in my election campaign. It was a complete stitch up. And
so compare that. Yeah.
So the reason I believe they did that is because, and I know we're in different channels here, I had criticised the AEC because of a particular policy they had around mandates. I had said that I'd made certain complaints that this policy that they did was abuse of human rights, clear violation of, I think it's Article 6.1 of the Treaty on Human Rights and Bioethics Treaty. And that's why I reckon they were out after us. Sort of thing. We weren't one of the good boys from the left side of politics. We were the hard men from the right. Anyhow, so you'd think, having lost that case, right, and we were unsuccessful at the election, we're disappointed in it, right? There was the AEC would have, put their tail between their legs and shut up, right? But they didn't. They then went and brought another case against me after the election campaign. So this time they were suing me in the federal court. They wanted damages of between $50,000 and $500,000 plus costs, right? Plus, of course, my cost of having to defend this matter. And they were arguing again that the 8-point font size that I'd used on my core flutes was too small, right? Even though you can clearly read it from 2 meters away. Right? No one was deceived. I obtained no advantage from it whatsoever. And they acknowledged that I'd actually gone about, when they first complained, I'd replaced all these signs, but they said, there's a couple of signs that you didn't replace that got out. So they found a photograph on Facebook of Holsworthy Railway Station that I'd had, and this was before my very first time I was out campaigning, and that was their big coup photograph sort of thing. That I had 10 signs, and each one I should be fined $20,000 for each sign, because you had to walk up close to see the authorization sign. And this was at a time we had in evidence and showed them signs from Anthony Albanese, Tony Abbott, every other, my good mate Josh Frydenberg, every other, half a dozen plus political candidates, high-ranking political candidates, that you couldn't see the authorizations on the photographs of their signs. But the AEC did nothing. They decided to go after me. So that was a 3-day court hearing. So I'm sitting up there in the federal court in Sydney. We're in the big federal courtroom up on the 22nd floor, overlooking Hyde Park there. You got the judge and the full bench and things, and I'm thinking, I'm saying to our lawyers, they have to drop this case. It is pathetic. It is beyond ridiculous. You can that they've just got no case, right? And they go, oh, we're not sure. So I've turned up. You think sometimes the case will be settled on the steps of the court, and that's sort of what I thought. But I've walked into the courtroom. They had 4 barristers with wigs on and 6 advising solicitors. They had a team of 10 taxpayer-funded lawyers and barristers in the courtroom arguing over what the correct font size should be on an authorisation. And for 3 days, I sat in that courtroom. Of course, I was cross-examined, which I would love to keep going. They cut that a bit short because I was making them look a bit stupid, I think. And I honestly thought in the first hour, when I thought the judge would say, look, is this really what you're using my courtroom for? You're coming in here and you're arguing about a font size of a candidate at the election where no one was deceived, you obtained no advantage, and you want to use 3 days of my court to argue over a font size? That's what I thought the judge would have said. But, in fairness to the judge, and I think he did a good job. He really looked at the evidence closely. He had to look at the evidence and weigh it up. But the first hour, I'm thinking, now I know what some of those guys must have been through that went through the Soviet show trials, where the government's, all the weight of the government prosecutors, bring you to court on some sort of Soviet show trial where they're trying to stitch you up about something. The government, the AEC, my legal costs were close to $700,000 in defending this matter. Now, we estimate the AECs would have been something like 1.4 to 1.5. So we're at the moment putting an application for our costs in. We not only won it, but we're ordered costs. So we think that this is going to have to cost the Australian taxpayer, the case they ran against me, $2 million.
Wow.
And now I look at that.
Yeah.
And then I compare the situation that we are seeing this week with the signs from the Yes campaign. Now,
well, I want to set the scene. I want to set the scene for that, Craig. So just in case we got anyone joining in that doesn't really know what these signs are about, I just want to kind of show that before I get to you to comment on that. So we've seen these signs here that these 2 signs here.
We got to stop and congratulate Rukshan, because this was Rukshan's story that everybody picked up after Rukshan.
Well, look, news.com.au did run with my tweets and some of my other coverage
saw you were
this.
You started this.
No, but
you are going to be the AEC's #1 target. First, they hated Craig Kelly. Craig, you're safe now because I think they've got their new target. And one that doesn't come with white privilege.
That's right. So they've got to be a bit more careful with me. But look, these were the signs. And look, it wasn't me. It was being shared by a voter or early voter that saw this. And a lot of users, particularly on X, had picked up on this and kind of amplified this because the AEC wasn't seeming too interested in it at the very start. And the issue here is, Craig, you'll probably chat about this soon, but you can see the Vote Yes sign. This is from the Yes 23 campaign. And then you have the voting centre sign from the AEC. And I actually, being a wedding photographer.
Are you a wedding photographer?
The running joke, I actually loaded up Photoshop and I ran a colour match on the colours. And there was a slight variation in the shade, but it was almost from the same palette of that colour. So whoever did this very deliberately matched the colours to the AEC colours.
And it's like none of their other branding.
None of their other branding. I mean,
designed
exactly. They've been doing all types of different colours, all types of Indigenous artwork, all types of different things that they've been doing on their branding. But for this particular one, on the first day of early voting, all around the country, they're putting up this purple sign. And it's in the font is almost the same as well.
It looks the same. It looks the same as the other sign.
Right. And then if you're looking at this from afar, like a lot of people ask me, like, what's the big deal? Like, who cares? It's a sign. People go there. They know what to do. Vote yes, vote no. But when you look at this from afar, it looks like a voting center for voting yes. You know what I mean? Like, and there's also all sorts of other issues involved in this as well. But based on the scene that you've set for us, Craig, with the issues or what issues that the AEC raised against you, and that kind of shows you that they do have the capacity to, enforce their the rules or whatever it is. But in this case, it's been a little bit different, hasn't it, Craig?
Remember, this case against the Yes campaign is for misleading voters. Right? It is a specific offence under the Electoral Act to mislead or deceive a voter in casting their vote. Right? The case against me was a technical matter about what size the authorisation should be. So if you're looking at the scale of the importance of the issues, it's like 10 to 1, because this is actually deception, misleading a vote, and it actually carries a penalty of 3 years in jail. That's how serious this offence is. Now, just going back to those signs, what the Yes campaigners deliberately intended to do here, you can also see down the bottom, you've got with the Yes, the stylised logo, that Australian stylised logo. That's actually the same, or very, very similar as to the voting centre signs of the AEC. Right? Now, and as the point that you made out, the Yes campaign have had a whole lot of signs out already, where they've had them in different sort of like, rainbow colours and Indigenous colours. This sign that they have here was never cited anywhere until polling day. So they knew what they were doing. They put this sign out on polling day.
Everything about it's the same.
Yeah.
If you compare it, even the logos, the placement of almost everything in the style is designed to confuse and to make people think. Even like, who knows? It's probably a subconscious thing, or they're saying like it's
What I think it is. Remember, we follow the Yes and the No case. We live and breathe it, 24/7 sort of thing, right? A lot of there is a significant number of Australians that have no interest whatsoever in politics. They're completely disconnected. They don't know what the referendum is about. They don't care what the referendum is about. All they just care is looking after their family, and getting on with life. And they're completely oblivious to politics. But they know they've got to go and vote. So when they know they've got to go up, they know they've got to get their name ticked off. So when they turn up to vote, they see the AEC signs in purple, and they equate actually voting with walking in and maybe ticking the ballot paper or putting yes on it, because they see there the official instructions. Yes, I've got to vote. Does having to compulsory vote mean yes? Now, it only has to be 1% of the population, and you can sway this referendum.
Absolutely.
Right? You only get 1% of the population in one state, and you can sway the referendum. So the people from the Yes campaign, they knew exactly what they were doing here.
Well, just on that, Craig, I mean, I wanted to show people here, just based on what you said about how they know what they were doing. A lot of times when we talk about these issues, particularly online, a lot of people bring up that the Liberal Party's done something similar to this previously around a campaign where they had purple colours and Chinese text. And the person involved at that time his name was Simon Frost, I believe. And he was the former acting Victorian State Director of the Liberal Party. And he actually admitted, according to the Guardian article, Liberal official admits Chinese language signs were meant to look like they came from the AEC. All right, so that's that guy. And now he's the same Simon Frost who is the CEO of Yes 23 campaign. I mean, if that is not enough evidence that these people potentially, in my opinion, but just based on this, there's an appearance that there's a bit of pre-planning around this type of
100% this pre-planning.
I mean, this in itself. I mean, you got to be,
But
I don't know.
That raises the question as to why the AEC are going so soft on the Yes campaign, who are deliberately being dodgy when it comes to this referendum, and they're playing games like this. Why they were so tough on a font size with UAP with Craig Kelly, but going so soft on the Yes, and what was their statement after the fact, where they've said that they basically spoke to the Yes campaign.
They spoke to them, and
the Yes campaign have promised them that they will move the signs back. Hold on, the whole thing's deceptive.
That's right. And those promises, promising to move the sign or what forth, they haven't been doing that, because on the second day those signs were still there in different spots, and then even today, people have been posting photos of those signs, being there. So really, they're not really sticking to their word. And I've even heard instances of people saying that they'll move the signs temporarily if told by one of the officials, but later on they'll move it back. So
why do you think there's such a difference in the way the AEC is treating something that is so clearly dishonest and you know it really it brings the whole thing into question and their whole authority. It raises all these questions. Why do you think with the Yes campaign they're being so lenient, but with you they were super tough that they were willing to take you to court? Or did you just scare them out of taking people to court?
Just a couple of other things on the double standards. In my case, the AEC issued a subpoena against my printer, and they sort of summons. They wanted all the documents and correspondence between my printer, my sign designer, and myself. Right? So I rang the printer. They said, "Oh yes, we've had to hand over all these documents to the court. Right? All the correspondence and all the email correspondence between us, right? The AEC must have been thinking there was some secret little message I'd sent to the sign designer. Make sure you only use 8-point font so people won't see it.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for, right? So something stupid like that. So why aren't the AEC doing the same thing, issuing a summons and subpoenaing?
And in their case, I guarantee
that gentleman that you put up there,
yeah.
right? And the people that they can work out who printed the signs, find out who printed the signs, and who designed the signs.
Maybe it's the same designer.
And get all the correspondence in writing. Now, I bet you,
100%.
I'd lay London to a brick on that there'd be some correspondence in there that they'd be saying, use the AEC's purple sign or copy that sort of thing.
Match it. It's for sure. There's no way that happened by accident, especially with that guy's history. But even without that guy's history, there ain't no way that was an accident.
Yeah, and I actually saw it in person. I went around in the city in Melbourne just to see for myself, and it was the purple ones right up at the front. So it would have gone out that message on the first day. We put the purple, and we see how we go. Luckily, it kind of backfired a little bit in the sense that people caught on to it. But it wasn't just the signs, Craig. Even some of their merchandise was purple. They've gone for this purple theme.
And this is not just something that, sorry, we got caught. No one knows about this. There was, as you said, there was the 2019 precedent that was set, and that was in Victoria. So that gentleman there was behind it. I think that's openly known, acknowledged. They used a Chinese sign, which used the purple and white lettering, and the court found that was deliberately deceptive. And since then, the AEC have put out on their website, they've actually got a page that says basically, don't use the purple colour because it can be misleading. And we also had at the 2020 Eden Monero by-election, where it was actually the Labor candidate had a sign up again in the purple and white that sort of basically said, make sure you number every box of your vote to be valid, which was not trying to swing the vote one way or the other. Just make sure you number every box. The AEC told them they had to remove that sign from the polling booths. And yet here we have, in my case, when they went after me, they said 100-yard radius from any polling booth. And yet here we are, they're just saying, just move them away a little bit so they're not next to our signs.
100 yards.
Yeah, it was
6 meters.
And utter
it was very vague, and it
wasn't
a direct order. It was like kind of, please do this, and they've agreed because they're such good people. The Yes campaign. If it was the other way around, if it was the No campaign who was playing these games, there's zero chance. And you know what? The fact is that I think most Australians, or most people who actually follow it, believe that they are completely biased and that everything is kind of politically motivated, and the way that they even answer on X or Twitter, whatever the kids are calling it these days. But the whole and you know what? If that's not true, it's shocking that they've created this kind of thing where people like myself, I can't take them seriously. I don't trust the AEC. Are you feeling that as well? Are you seeing that?
Look, I unfortunately have to say yes, just from my own practical experience, how they were prepared to, basically put at risk, even if they were successful against me, I probably would have had to pay half their costs, might have been $700,000 plus things. They still would have been up for $700,000, probably even if they beat me and they won that case, but they didn't. So that they were gambling with $2 million of taxpayers' money to run the case against me. And absolutely, it was frivolous, and it was vexatious, and it was malicious. It was
And
a
they
malicious
lost. So they were wrong.
prosecution, and they lost. And the judge actually slammed them. If you read the judgment, he actually slams them and basically says.
But do you think that maybe for a second, let's pretend like they're not biased. Is it possible that Craig Kelly scared the living crap out of the AEC, that they just don't want to start another fight with anyone else?
Well, look, what they've done, if you're arguing about font sizes, yes, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to colours, and they are using a different regulation. The regulation against me was simply on the font size legibility. This is a different section of the Act that goes to misleading and deceptive conduct. Right?
Which is exactly what it is.
A completely different level of case. They've got the precedent of the case, the 2019 case from the Victoria with the Chinese signs using the purple and white colouring, which is much less than what we're seeing here. And to think that they're sort of giving them, and you're right on when you follow it on Twitter or X, I think was on Monday or Tuesday, Tuesday, I think it was. If you follow what they, first of all, they said, "Oh, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. We don't have any authority." Yeah. And it was only people like myself and I think Rukshan copy things and just say, "Hang on a minute, you're talking BS. You do have the authority. You can actually, if you want to, you can file an injunction in the federal court, like in an hour's notice, if you want to. You've got complete power to force them to remove these signs and hit them with huge penalties and fines."
If that's not misleading and deceptive conduct, what is? To me, that is literally the definition of misleading and deceptive.
Yeah.
Well, that was the idea of it.
It's trying to convince a disengaged voter that when they turn up to the polls and know it's a compulsory vote, right? So people, I have to vote, and you go up there.
The official thing is yes.
It says vote, and it says yes, vote yes. So they confuse a compulsory vote with voting yes on the ballot paper.
Yeah.
Right now, as I said, you only got 1% of the population of that to happen to, and you swung the referendum.
And that's not the only craziness that we've seen.
No,
this week.
well, I wanted to keep talking about misleading and deceptive conduct. Benji, if you pull up the screen. So there was also another tweet that the Yes campaign put out, and I wanted to particularly focus on this because I know the UAP has been doing a bit of work on this as well. And this is with the ticks and crosses saga, something that's also been, I think the AEC has done a really poor job of communicating that, and I think that's become a bit of a mess as well, in terms of the ticks being accepted as a yes vote and the no's being not accepted. The X's not being accepted as a no vote. And that actually went to the court, and I think UAP is actually following that up with an appeal as well. If there's that correct, Craig?
They're still finalising that.
They're still finalising that. Yeah.
We thought that was so outrageous that you could say, well, if there's a tick on the ballot paper, that's someone wanted to vote yes, and therefore we have to count that as a formal vote. But if there's a cross, well, we're not too sure, and we'll throw that out as an informal vote.
That's right. So then the Yes campaign tried to capitalize on that, I think, a couple of days ago, and they put out this graphic on their official campaign Twitter, and this was vote no X and vote yes tick. And this is after we've had all this discussion around this, and how it can be misleading and deceptive. But the Yes campaign put this out. Now it took again the AEC to correct this.
That is complete fraud. What you are seeing there is just election fraud. It's intended to trick someone in, misleading them about the way they vote. So if I look at that, and if I put a cross to vote no, my vote is informal, but the tick is a formal yes vote. So that is actually deceiving. That they should have been prosecuted over, as well as the sign is a separate issue. They should have been prosecuted over that, right? To set the example that you cannot do this. But basically, we got caught, sorry, we got caught. Let's just take it down and everything's forgiven, sort of thing. Like,
There's a lot of misinformation and
it's
disinformation
like
from the
you're
people.
robbing a bank,
Right?
and you get to the court as you're walking out. And you, oh no, sorry, here's the money back.
Yeah.
You know, all's forgiven. I can keep on walking down the street.
Yeah, I was saying, Craig, there's a lot
reality.
of misinformation and disinformation coming from the people that cry about misinformation and disinformation on the regular.
Yeah, absolutely. And and then on top of that, there's a lot of fumbling by the people that are supposed to ensure that there is, that the process is fair and legitimate and our democracy is protected. They're just like the AEC have been fumbling their way through this.
Yeah.
Because I think they're conflicted between needing to seem like they're actually upholding the integrity of the referendum, but also they really want one side to win.
Yeah.
And you're seeing some, like, I feel like at points, turning around to the AEC and going, just get off Twitter for a second.
Yeah.
And protect the integrity of our vote, because some of their is this the one?
This is the one. I'll read it out.
Yeah,
I'll read it out. This is what the AEC tweeted. And if we take this as just a tweet by itself, which often it is taken that way, this is what the AEC wrote. If someone votes at two different polling places within their electorate and places their formal vote in the ballot box at each polling place, their vote is counted. And then they followed that up a bit later with, we cannot remove the vote from the count because due to the secrecy of the ballot, we have no way of knowing which ballot paper belongs to which person. However, the number of double votes received is incredibly low and usually related to mental health or age.
How do they know mental health?
And look, and just on that point, actually, they're saying that these double votes happen because of mental health or age. If you consider that the AEC is aware of that, and then you have the Yes campaign putting out these purple yes, vote yes signs at the front of the building, if they're saying people with mental health and age might vote twice, well, they might also look at a purple sign that says vote yes and go and vote yes. I mean,
Absolutely.
the AEC is aware of this potentially being an issue. But regardless of all of that, Craig, this is almost an instructional.
That's the thing to me. I'm looking at that, right, and I'm thinking the activist class, which is certainly not the No campaign, it is much more so the Yes campaign. Just the fact that they come from the left, and if you look at the protest, the rallies in the lead up, and just who they are, it's made up of the activist class. To me, like, none of us really knew this, that you could just go ahead and do that. To me, this is like, whether it was a conscious instructional thing for them to put out someone going, hey, what's a clever way to let the activists know that there's actually a way around it.
Well, they're all talking amongst themselves saying, let's go vote multiple times.
100% they're doing that. 100%.
Openly, they're doing it now on Twitter, at least.
100%. They've gone from this, they've gone, we can do it and get away with it. The worst that's going to happen is after the fact, they're going to be asked, why did you do that? And they can say, oh, they can make up some excuse, whatever. Mental health. They've been given the excuse just under that. Mental health. And as people rightly got outraged about the fact that the AEC put out instructions on how to vote more than once, then they've kind of backtracked a bit, trying to explain away how it doesn't really happen enough it's never really happened enough to sway. And that's if you just take their word on everything
correct.
right now.
That's not correct by itself. Just a couple of things on that. For the AEC to put out a tweet like that without adding on to the end of the tweet, this is illegal conduct.
Illegal conduct, and you will be prosecuted.
Yes, that's what they should have put. That's what they
Exactly.
should have put
It took a whole day for them to do that.
They did put the next day after the outrage that it's illegal.
Yes.
But they didn't go. It wasn't even going really hard on the fact that you were going to follow it up and prosecute you. The activist class took that as an invitation and an instruction to go and get this done.
Well, that's also, again, the double standards. In this by-election, you've got the silent majority of just average citizens that will go and do their duty and vote in the referendum. And then you've got this woke activist class that think that they can engage in this sort of noble cause corruption. They think that the Yes cases is such a noble cause that we're entitled to engage in this fraud. They're entitled to cheat. As you've seen examples there on the purple signs.
It's a means to an end. They think that they have the right to break whatever rules because they're on the right side of history and you're wrong and you're just a bigot, racist, or as others say, dickhead.
That's right. So therefore, to balance it out, we're entitled to go and vote multiple times. And the AEC put the message out, giving them like an encouragement to do so. It's just another example of the AEC not playing us with a straight bat on this. And it also goes to show, we need to improve our election laws. There's been many times in the past several elections that after the election campaign, we've said that you must show your ID when you vote. Now, a lot of people turn up to vote, and I've seen them, they pull their ID out and say, here's my ID. And the electorate goes, no, you don't need to. So the reality is, you can go around and vote. I've taken my election, I had 42 booths in my old electorate of Hughes. You could go around and vote in every one of those 42 booths under your own name. Right? Or if you know your neighbour, John Smith, voted at the local primary school, you could go to the 41 other booths and say, I'm John Smith, and vote under those as well.
And the thing is, no one would have known that. Like a minority of people would have known that, but the vast majority of Australians wouldn't have known that till the AEC told them that you can do that. And
That's
forget their
right.
follow-up tweets.
Yeah. And there's no way that can be checked. Now, the idea that this has never happened in the past before, the late Ewan Jones, one of the funniest men ever in Parliament. I don't know if you guys ever got to meet him, but this guy was an absolute, this guy was a scream sort of thing. He was you couldn't be around him without him telling like the funniest jokes and putting the whole room in laughter sort of thing many times. He was a wonderful man. He lost his seat, I think it was the 2016 election. He lost his seat by like a hand, might have been 20 or 30 votes sort of thing. They found out in that election from memory, there were more than 100 people that double voted. So the double voting in his electorate likely cost him his seat and cost him his.
Could he not challenge it, or was it? Why couldn't he challenge it at that point?
I think he did challenge it at the time, and I think they said, "Oh, too bad, too sad," sort of thing. The results are in,
Who's that? The court, or was it the AEC? He challenged it at the AEC.
I'm pretty sure it's just the AEC did it, or I can't remember the exact details and things. And it ended up being it didn't affect the election result, even though it could have potentially. Yeah. So the idea that this doesn't sort of matter, and it's not only does it affect the election result, you want to have in our elections when the result comes in, you want every Australian to say, well, I'm disappointed that my side didn't win, but the result has been done fairly. That's what you want. That's an important thing in our democracy. Like look at the chaos in America that they're having over the disputed American elections. Now, I'm not saying who was right or who was wrong in that, but the fact that there's a dispute and many people in America question the result, which is a factual statement. I'm not I know we're on certain platforms where you can't talk about that issue, but the reality is many people in America perceive that there's an issue with that election, and therefore that flows through the political system. We don't want that in our country. You want to make sure that the result is clear cut. We know the AEC is above all this, and unfortunately, the current AEC, the way they've done things, the double standards they're doing, the easy pass that they're giving on these purple signs, some of the other information they put out, Australia have lost confidence in the AEC under the current chairman, and I think it's Tom Rogers. I really think he needs to resign. I think he has brought the AEC into disrepute in the public perspective, and for the sake of the nation and for our fair elections going forward, and he simply should resign and say, I failed in my job to keep the perspective of the AEC in the Australian public's eyes as playing an even bat or playing a straight bat.
And he should probably take his whole social media team with him.
I think the
Twitter team.
Look, I mean, I'm conflicted about that because it's actually good to see an institution like
engaging
government public institution engaging with people on social media and answering questions and being helpful. I think it's a really good thing in some aspect. But there is an element of the AEC Twitter staff or ex-staff that have a bit of personal character, personal bias that comes through.
They're condescending
sometimes, and I'm like, really? Like, do we want this from
It's like that Six News kid. It's like a room full of those.
Leo.
That's how they talk.
Well, I actually got Leo's fact checked here. So,
you've got.
I just wanted to mention there is a bit of fact checking around this that's happening in the sense of a lot of the fact checks are not necessarily fact checks, but they're saying it does happen. There are double votes, but it's negligible. I think that's kind of the angle to ease people's worries about this. But it shouldn't be happening in the first place, and it should be discouraged more than anything.
Exactly. And negligible until now, fine. You can make that argument. But until now, the AEC has never instructed people on how to do it. So I think things are a little bit different now that the Twitter team has let everybody know, has let the activist class know. And it's just so funny. It's the same sort of arrogance that this Leo deals with these situations and talks down like it's and if you dare, like I'm probably going to get attacked now for how old is he? Is he over 18 yet?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so I'm going to be very careful because that you're not allowed to. It's a protected class. They're allowed to act like this, and the whole AEC team act like this kid, where they speak in a condescending way, like, "Don't you know it's never really happened before? You're such a conspiracy theorist." It's like, mate, the fact that it hasn't happened before is okay. Is good. Okay, we can agree on that, but that doesn't mean we should, number one, let people know how to do it, and two, act like it doesn't happen. It does happen. What you're saying is it does happen.
Yeah.
And now that we've let everyone know, especially the activist class who are desperate at the moment, and everything points to them being desperate, the fact that they're doing all the little dirty tricks that they're doing now shows how desperate they are because they know they're losing. Even in all the polls, they're losing. So, and you don't have to believe the polls. I think the polls don't represent the silent majority of no's who are too, like the whole Trump effect of you don't want to say you're voting for Trump. No, you don't want to say you're voting no. No, you don't see people putting no signs outside their businesses because they're scared of getting in trouble for it. So I think that we're going to see a wave of no that they didn't even expect. But even with their polls, which they're seeing that they're losing, and so they're desperate. And here you've got the same people who are saying that it's negligible, saying that it has happened in the past, just not strong enough. And to me, that's just another encouragement to the activist class to say to them, hey, guys, it's happened in the past. It's just you guys haven't done it well enough.
Yeah, because I think the problem really ends up being, Craig, if it's a very fine line between winning and losing, whichever way it goes, people aren't going to have confidence in the result. That's the problem here. And at the end of the day, the AEC is responsible for running a smooth electoral process. They have lots of funding. They have lots of resources. And the fact that they can't even get these type of basic things correct for this, I think
they're better off just doing a Twitter poll. They should just set up a Twitter. I don't even understand how in 2023 they're so backwards in the systems that we use to run an election, where there are so many ways that people can get behind the system. Like, it boggles my mind.
There's two ways that this can be fixed. One is that you must show your ID before you vote. Now, remember, the very same people that say, oh, no, you don't have to show the ID, they're the same people wanting to bring in digital identity for everything else you have to do in society.
Yeah. 100%.
If you want to go and buy some toilet paper from Woolworths, you want to show your digital ID.
That's right.
But you go and then they go, digital ID, everyone must carry it all the time, right? But not for when it comes to voting, sort of thing. They say, like, you must have to show your ID to vote, and I think you either then have the booths in your area linked, right, so you can't multiple vote, or you can only vote at one booth in your electorate. Right? Now, why should I was elector in Hughes before, my previous seat. I've got a booth down in Bundeena at one side of Sydney, and I've got a booth at Wattle Grove at the other side of Sydney. Like, it's an hour's trip from one to the other. Why should, if I live in Bundeena, have the right to go and vote in Wattle Grove? I should just be voting in one or the other. Restrict it to the area that you're in. So, when you're ticked off that, you're ticked off at that booth, right? Your name's not on 40 other one booth where someone can come and vote under your name. So
I would love a system. I would love a system where I could see that I could see my vote like after the fact that it's been counted, I could see my vote and see that it's like it's been registered and see what I voted for to make sure that
That'd have to be very on the same day. You're saying
a computer thing. No, like even after the fact.
after the fact, maybe on the same day,
So that everybody could look into their thing
it
and
would
go,
be
yeah,
digitized.
I was counted and
Yeah.
they counted me correctly.
Yeah, you know what they do in the third world, in the developing world, parts of the world where I come from, Craig. You know what they do? They actually mark your finger
That's
with
right.
the ink.
Yes, yep.
And it's the most basic thing that you could potentially
right.
do to show you that this person's actually already voted to stop this kind of issue. And like we need something, maybe even something simple like that. If we don't want to go down that path, yes, verify the ID. Still do the paper ballots, whatever, but verify the ID on the spot. Link it to a system where it can tick it off. And if you go there somewhere else and you try to use the same ID, it comes up on the system and they say no. It's that simple. And if they want to dispute it and vote again on another spot, they can maybe fill in the form and vote again. And then those things can be checked a lot quicker, and double ups can be figured out a lot quicker. That's the easier system of doing it.
Before all of that, how about just a level playing field? How about if they're going to take Craig Kelly to court over the font size,
100%,
multiple times on election eve and after the election,
and require they required an election eve to remove my signs in a 100-metre radius from the polling booth.
Did you do it?
Here they are saying, with a much more serious issue, saying I just moved them so they're not next to our signs.
Mm. Yeah. Did you move your signs?
No, because we won the case.
No, okay. So that So on that night
we had if we it's only lucky that, remember, they filed this court case against me at 7:30 night on election eve. It's only lucky that we had the resources at the United Australia Party that we did, that we could get a team of barristers and solicitors together within an hour on a Friday night.
It was Clive Palmer's team.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
they were probably still in court from the last case they were running.
But look, the truth is, if it was anyone else that didn't have the resources to fight back,
of course,
that order would have gone through. They would have won that. We wouldn't have been able to defend it. They would probably thought that you file an application at 7:30 and the case is at 8:30 an hour later. They would have thought probably no one would have turned up to defend it. They would have won it by default. And I would have been personally in contempt of the court's order if I didn't go out at midnight that night and start removing my signs. Mm-hmm. And the judge says in his decision, he says, the order you're asking me to make would find Mr. Kelly in contempt the minute I make it. So the fact is, remember, so I could, they sent you to jail for contempt of court. So that's
you wouldn't do too well in jail, Craig.
Sorry?
You wouldn't do too well in jail. You're too loud. You're too pretty.
I don't know whether I don't know how I'd go. But this is the reality. These guys knew what they were. You can laugh and joke about it.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And the crazy thing is that those who are willing to sit by and watch it and actually celebrate it because it's their team that keeps taking advantage of it, both whether it's the fact in the election that they went after Clive or the fact that now they're being super lenient. But they don't realize it's a threat to democracy is a threat to democracy. You shouldn't be happy even if your team is winning off it.
You know what you should do, Avi?
What should I do?
We'll go to the printers. We'll design a big sign with vote no in purple.
Yeah.
All the AEC
but
colors.
I'm voting yes.
All the branding, big vote no sign, and you go in front of the polling stations and you stand there with that sign. What do you think is going to happen?
Oh,
they're going to flip. They're going to flip.
Well, can we borrow Clive's lawyers?
But the thing is, that's what people said. The no campaign should go and put signs out. There is, you don't have time. You've got to design.
Don't do that stuff.
This is planned. They've done it. They've set this up the whole time. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that sign you see there, right? That sign hasn't been seen anywhere. They've had all these other signs out all over the place, right? Which you've got no objection to, which are all multicolours with I think the yes is written in the yellow. But that specific sign, they've held that back. They've held that back until the first day of pre-poll when they wanted to roll them out.
What was the legislation? Was the it was Deceptive and
I think it's section from memory 328 of the 329 of the Electoral Act. And it basically says you cannot mislead or deceive someone in their casting of their votes.
yeah.
Right? That's the and that was the legislation previously that they relied upon to find the purple signage. There we go. 329 was correct. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not the 329 was not the one they brought up against me.
you.
I'm sure that's a different. They said, and mine was just.
Is the penalty higher on this one? Is the penalty higher on this one, or is it the same penalty?
This section, this misleading.
This is more serious.
Jail. It's the penalty is up to 3 years in jail on this one. The penalty. Luckily, there was no
lock
jail.
them up. Yeah. Lock them all up.
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about this issue and kind of really got into the crux of it as well. But a lot of this emanates from the fact that the Yes campaign are really struggling right now with the polls, with the perception in the public. But, you know, the votes, I think early votes, almost 900,000 votes have already been cast. So, you know, the early voting is a big deal.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will vote, have had voted prior to the 14th. But what we're seeing is, Craig, more and more, you know, I think unhinged displays from some of the people in the Yes camp. We had Ray Martin of, I think, Current Affair and 60 Minutes.
I haven't seen him in a long time, and I just found it funny that he was calling other people dinosaurs.
Yeah, I thought he was extinct, but the dinosaur Ray Martin has come back, and this is from Fair Australia. They've shared this. Yes 23 calls them racist or stupid. Ray Martin calls them dinosaurs or I can't say that word. D-heads. Can we use curse
why
words?
can't you say dickhead?
I don't want to be like Ray Martin, dickheads. So that's what Ray Martin said. We call them Australians, and it's got, you know, bunch of people who are voting no. But I just want to play Ray Martin's comments.
People on the screen,
yes,
those Indigenous Australians that Ray Martin is calling a dickheads.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that was
he tried to walk it back, saying that. What was he saying?
He was saying that he was calling people that say, "If you don't know, vote no." The phrase "if you don't know, vote no," that is like a dickhead,
which was a
phrase.
Paul Keating phrase, I think, one of his original phrases.
Oh, really?
That goes back to the introduction of the GST. He says, if you don't understand it, vote against it. Right?
Oh, that's so funny.
Well, I want to play Ray Martin's comments.
Let's hear Ray Martin.
Let's listen to Ray Martin. Let's see what he thinks of Australia. I actually called him Dinosaur Ray Martin.
If you don't know, find out what you don't know. What that asinine slogan is saying is, if you're a dinosaur, a dickhead, who can't be bothered reading, then don't know. The words of the referendum could not be simpler than they are. The no vote organisers also keep asking Albo for the details. What about the details? At this stage of the game, the details simply don't matter. They never did matter, honestly. They're irrelevant.
I thought that. I actually thought that part of forget the dickhead part. I thought the fact that he said that was actually even more cooked.
It's so cooked, and the fact is that he tried to walk it back after saying he wasn't calling the people who were voting that it was more about the phrase or whatever. He's literally saying he's saying that if you're voting no because you don't know, and how can you know? And then he goes on to say that we don't need to know. He's like, you're an idiot if you don't know, you should go and read it.
Yeah.
And then, but we get it. The information is not out there because it doesn't matter. So what am I meant to read? But I'm the dickhead. I'm the dickhead. Ray Martin is the legend.
Forget the facts. The details don't. Seriously, fancy going on something saying the details don't matter. This is a change to our constitution, our most important national document. And he's their team. The details don't matter. They're not relevant. Like there's always in everything, the devil is in the detail. And then the hypocrisy for him to go and say, "Oh, now go and find out," but not going to tell you the details. And that's a true reason why people should be voting no, because Albanese, he has not told us how the selection process will be for the people on The Voice. Right? How will you be selected? Will you have to be Indigenous to be on The Voice? How will that be verified? Who will make the picks? Is it all going to be kept picks of Albanese? How many people will be his captain picks? How much will they get paid? Will they have offices in Canberra? Will they have paid staff? Will they get paid cars? What will their salary and remuneration be? What provisions will be to get rid of them? Are they there for life? Do they have an appointment for a number of years? What happens if they've engaged in a corrupt conduct? Who supervises the activities of this board? How can you show that they're representative of all Australian Indigenous communities across the nation? All that detail of the legislation should have been the very first thing Albanese held up to say, this is how it is. This is the piece of paper. This is how it is. This is how it's going to work. So everyone that goes in and votes know exactly what they're voting for. At the moment, you're voting for these vague promises that these people are going to will do the right thing. The very same people that are engaging in all this misleading and deceptive conduct.
Why don't you trust the Yes Cam?
Yeah.
Don't you trust Alba?
Oh, look, I mean, go for it, Avi.
What I just find also funny in that, because today Albo's gone out, and I posted that video on X just now, is he's calling on everyone to be respectful in this debate. But he was sitting there and he was celebrating and congratulating that speech.
Yeah, he called it powerful.
He called that speech powerful yesterday, and today he's telling everyone to be respectful. He's telling everyone else to be respectful when his guy just called everybody dickheads because they're saying if you don't know, vote no. And he's saying you should. I'm trying to work it out. You say that they. It's a dumb thing. It's a dumb slogan because you should just go and read the if you don't know, go read it, and then you'll know. But at the same time, you don't actually need the detail.
Well, this is the thing, right? I looked into this a bit, and I think it goes something like this. They know the people who are into politics, like us, discussing these things. The politicians, the media, will be discussing all this stuff and arguing about it and wanting to know the details. But like as Craig mentioned before, most Australians might not have the time to. Get across everything exactly. But the government should be providing that in a simple, easy way to understand and providing those details, the important details. But I think they want to appeal to the Australian ideas or the vibe or the fair go, these kind of things. And I actually got a video of one of the, his name is Dean Park, and he's actually a part of the Yes 23 campaign, very high up there, one of the architects. And it's very interesting how they frame how they're approaching this and why they're not really, sharing details with people. I'm just going to play this because I think it's important for Australians to hear how the Yes campaign is actually dealing with this and what their strategy is. I'll just play this video now.
My question is, when I've been having conversations around the kitchen table and you've got these staunch individuals who are just like, mate, why would I vote yes to something I don't know the details about? Like, if I'm going to say this, why don't I have the answers to this, and this, and this?
Yeah, so it is an interesting one because if you actually answered those questions with a 100-page detailed design report, most people wouldn't know what they're looking at. And that's not to diminish anybody's, intellect on this sort of thing, but for most Australians, the questions of Indigenous representative bodies, of governance, of the relationship of the parliament and the executive government and electoral models and all of that sort of, it's just not part of our day-to-day interest. What we've found in this question is the question of, I don't know the detail, actually, it isn't the underlying intention behind that. The underlying intention is, I want to know that this is going to make a difference. Whether it's 24 or 36 or 48, whatever role the Australian Electoral Commission may or may not have in the selection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples isn't really the point.
Yeah, so I think that gets to what you were saying, Craig. They don't really care about anyone knowing anything about how this is going to operate. They're aware of this, and they're playing on the fact that people will say, oh, it is going to help people. And the commercials that they run are all about things like recognition. It doesn't actually even touch on the advisory bodies. Some of these commercials they're running, they're very emotive. They're about, so many Indigenous people end up in jail, or so many Indigenous people have issues with health. And it all goes to emotion. They don't necessarily want you to know what form it will take. But because, like you said, this is constitutional change, the detail becomes very important. because it actually, the formation of that and how it operates with the constitution as it exists today and how it impacts the rest of the population as well, because it does end up being some type of race-based advisory body where Australians like myself and RV and others who have maybe migrated to this country were excluded from that body. So there's a difference there. It doesn't really tell us how it's going to operate, what the parameters are. And that's the detail that's missing. And that's the detail that we continue to ask Albanese and this campaign to provide us. And that's the detail they continue to refuse to provide us. And they keep giving us these feel-good vibes. And yeah, I don't think it's good enough. I think, most Australians looking at this, Ray Martin might call us dickheads or whatever for wanting to know. But we honestly want to know how this is going to impact us, because we're in this country as well. We're Australian as well. And we deserve to know because we contribute to this country. And, the future of this country is also our future. And if they're not willing to just give us this very basic detail, I think it's very simple then in that instance to vote no.
That's also why you see the more detail that's been leaked out or discussed, the more the yes vote has collapsed. If you look back at the original polls of this, the original support for yes was close to 70%. But as more people sort of looked at what the details were and thought about it, the yes vote has just continued to collapse. So that's one reason they don't want you to think about the detail. Because if you look at the detail, you're more likely to vote no. So it was all about the vibe.
And the emotion.
It was all about also vilifying anyone that wanted to vote no. And look, the reasons for voting no are the exact opposite of racism. The reason that the people are voting no is because we want to have an Australia that is colourblind. We hold up those values of Martin Luther King. What you'll be judged by the content of your character, not the colour of your skin. That's the society that we want.
You UAP guys love that line.
Well, it is.
What's his name? Babette always brings that up.
Well, it is one of the most magnificent political speeches in history. And the vision that Martin Luther King set out for America that was divided, that they would all come together as one nation and they would forget about the colour of your skin and it would just be on the content of your character. They were just magnificent words that will ring throughout history, I think, for eternity. And that's what and that's what I think the majority of Australians want. We don't want to enshrine the separateness in our Constitution. We want to see that everyone's equal under the Constitution and the law. That's why we are voting no. And yet the Yes campaign are holding us all out as these nasty, horrible racists that should be abused, when it's the exact opposite. It's the Australians voting no that want to see us united as all one people with all equal rights under the Constitution, irrespective of what our backgrounds are, irrespective of what the pigmentation of our skin is. That's what we want.
It's funny because it's so typical of 2023, any sort of campaign, political campaign these days. It's so you've got the woke, the woke activists that their entire arguments are based on, it's about how you feel, emotive, not there's, and as soon as you ask for any substance in the detail on any issues, whether it's this or transgenderism or climate change, it always ends in the same place. And then they just turn to labeling you all sorts of names. In this case, you're either a racist, a bigot, a hater. And, almost every Australian really wants the Indigenous communities to do well. And that's what they're playing on. And that's what they played on in the beginning, because that's why most people at the beginning were into it, because everybody goes, oh yeah, we really, we see what happens in Alice Springs. We really want to fix things for these communities. And they played on the emotions. But then when people started to ask questions, going, okay, cool, you got me on the emotional part. You got me on the emotional part. Now I want some of the substance on how is that going to affect me. Is this going to actually cost me more money? How are you going to make up that? How is this system going to be built? And then as soon as they couldn't answer that or wouldn't answer that, and they kept pushing, well, if you're asking that, even though you were the same person, like Kamal's a great example, but even though you were the same person that actually supported the idea and concept over the emotional argument, you supported it. But now that you're asking also for some more substance, suddenly they're tarring you with the same brush as anybody that really is racist, anybody that really doesn't care about, those communities, or really, that holds some sort of prejudice against then suddenly it knocked down and people woke up. And that's why I reckon the silver lining of this referendum is going to be where we can turn to the population and say, and we can point to what's happened here. You know, we can tell the Liberal Party, you see, one, when you actually stand for the values and you go, dude, don't stoop to the level of trying to explain, come at it from an emotional perspective as well, you know, whether it's on all those issues, again, climate change, transgenderism, women's rights, whatever other things where the Liberal Party tend to, you know, jump onto Labor's policy and just act like they're a little softer on it, or sometimes they go harder on it. This tells them, well, no, actually you can stand by common sense and actual facts and stand for conservative values and you'll win. But also it tells the population, like afterwards, I know if the no wins is doing what we do when we commentate on current affairs and issues, we can turn around and use this as an analogy to show the population, dude, this has happened before. They are one-trick ponies. Every time there's any issue, what they do is they run to the emotional argument, and whether you're convinced by the emotional argument at first or not, if you ask for anything deeper than the emotional argument, then straight away they're going to go to ridicule you, call you all sorts of names, whether it's, call you a hater, call you a racist, call you a bigot, or call you just a plain dickhead.
Yeah.
You know, they don't care.
Of course.
They go as low as they can go. And the fact that they're playing dirty on this one is only because this is an issue that they've realized that they're desperate.
Yeah. And look, to summarize some of those points that you've made, I actually wanted to play this video. I think this was a very powerful piece of television on Q&A of all places. I don't believe I'm saying Q&A and powerful piece of television, but this is an exchange between the host. What's her name? Patricia Cavallo.
Oh, gosh. Didn't she go to Threads? Why was she?
Why she went to back? Threads and she came back on Twitter?
She went. That was so exciting. But she went to Threads and she was so excited by it. And do you know that ABC launch? And I think they're still doing it because I went onto Threads the other day just to see what's up, and it's totally dead. Yeah. But ABC is just working so hard on getting the conversations on Threads going. But the room is getting emptier and emptier. Anyways, we've gone on
They banned me on the first day on Threads on ABC. They blocked me on the first day because I laughed at one of their tweets. They blocked me the first day because they wanted this like little secure space. Anyway,
I guarantee you that was like a white, privileged,
most likely
uni student who. But there's a racism case.
Let's play this exchange. I thought this exchange was powerful because it's a question around, it's got two Indigenous men talking about the voice to Parliament, and you got the host, ABC host, who has a certain agenda as well, as you will see, in my opinion. But it actually explains a lot of what we're debating and how, a lot of the issues that we're talking about are probably not really necessary in terms of having a voice to Parliament with particularly this racial division to solve some of these issues. But anyway, let's play this video.
The agenda's not your opinion. She's made it quite clear.
She's made it quite clear. I mean, sometimes I don't know if she's the host or, but she tries to be.
No, but she is encouraging people to vote yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What the voice is going to do is going to lock disadvantage into the Constitution in perpetuity. And I really struggle with that as an Indigenous person.
You think it will do that?
If it's set up to make it so that we always have this, way to express our issues. Personally, I think it would make more sense to fund need over race, and we could find other ways to value.
Indigeneity isn't race.
How is it not?
It's peoples who pre-existed colonisation.
You're going to have to explain that. Sorry, I don't
There are blonde and blue-eyed Indigenous people in the Arctic Circle.
We're not in the Arctic Circle.
It doesn't matter.
This is a constitutional alteration for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Whether there were peoples who pre-existed colonisation by the British, they were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Yeah.
And it's a recognition of that historical truth.
Okay. So the races we're talking about are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
The recognition is not just about disadvantage, it's about our languages, our culture, our history.
But it's also about how mainstream we are and our contribution
of our art,
to the country.
of all of the good things we can contribute to the country. It's not just about disadvantage. I hope the day comes very quickly when we're over our disadvantage.
So we won't need a voice then?
And why would we not? We've got lots to contribute to the country of
we do that already.
That are positive.
We do that already.
It's just
we are
just
very
not
much
necessary.
a part of our national fabric.
Okay, so you clearly, wait, I just wanted to, you have a different worldview about how to share that, right?
Yeah,
But you're saying that you think it locks in disadvantage. Noel, what I hear from you is that you're saying it doesn't lock in disadvantage, it deals with that, and then it exists as what, like it's my words, is it like a cultural authority?
Well,
I thought that was great because
mental gymnastics,
race, and indigeneity, and But I thought the point about locking in disadvantage was a great point to have made, because this is what this is. It locks in that the fact that there's a group of people in our country, the Indigenous Australians, First Nations, however you want to term it, that are disadvantaged, that are different to us, and that they always require this advisory body. But then Noel Pearson there said that, when that other person said, what about when we solve those issues, then we will no longer need that, right? So why is it in the Constitution? That's correct. If we can solve people's issues, and we can do it all as one country.
Disingenuous, his response to Noel Pearson, because their whole argument for the reason why we need it is because they're disadvantaged.
Right.
If you don't do this, then you're a racist because you don't want to help people that have been disadvantaged. He's saying it's not about disadvantage.
That's
no,
right.
It has nothing to do with disadvantage. So then why do we need it in the first place?
That's right, yeah. But that goes to show you it's more than just what it appears to be, how they're promoting it. It is about treaty. It is about this truth-telling that is in the full Uluru Statement from the heart. If you want to read it, got to be careful with the fact checkers.
It's one page plus there's added extras.
But what are your thoughts on that, Craig?
It really locks in separativeness. It sends the message to young Aboriginal, kids that, hey, you guys are not, quite there. You guys are separate to the rest of the country and separate to the rest of the society, and there's separate rules for you under the Constitution. And as Jacinta Price, I think, magnificently said it, that locks in victimhood. And when you tell someone that they're a victim and they're a disadvantage, you are disempowering them. And that's who
was that guy? He was great.
I forgot his name. The name escapes me at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. You're actually harming the very people you're trying to help. The best thing that we can do to end Indigenous advantage is tell every Aboriginal, young kid, you live in the greatest country in the world, and you can achieve whatever you want to, whatever your dreams are, you can achieve. If you work hard and you study hard, and if you're into sport, you train hard, and you put aside all the drugs and bits and pieces and all the nonsense that goes on, you can succeed in this country, and you're not going to be held back because of the colour of your skin. That's the message that we've got to get out to young Indigenous kids, to make sure that there's nothing that we can uplift them. They've got to uplift themselves, and that comes about by the believing in themselves, the believing that they are equal in this society and they have a chance to make a success of our lives, and having our Constitution separate them and have separate rules for different races sends the exact wrong message.
Yep, the opposite message. Well, let's move on to our good friend.
Senator Lydia Thorpe, and she's in the news today. Bit of an outburst, but also I think she's had some threats made to her by someone wearing a mask and burning an Aboriginal flag, which is abhorrent, and those type of things should definitely not be happening. But she's come out to give a press conference around that, and she's made some interesting comments. Now, Lydia Thorpe is also in the no side, but it's a different no, right? I think they call it the
sovereign no.
The sovereign no.
They were at the no. There was a lot of them at the. It's weird because they're divided. Like they were at the Sydney no campaign. There was a lot of them there, but those were also. She was very pro the narrative on everything else. Lydia Thorpe's like a far left wing activist on all issues. So I think she was probably very pro. The COVID stuff, she was part of the Greens at that time, so she was pro. Whereas I think the sovereign ones, that came to Sydney, they were also they were talking about sovereignty during COVID as well, saying, "Hold on, stop coming into our communities," and they were locking down communities. What happened in Aboriginal communities during COVID was the most racist policy. You want to talk about racism in Australia? Racist policies by white people to black communities, telling them, look at what happened during COVID. In Indigenous, remote Indigenous communities in the name of health. So I lose all respect for people like Lydia Thorpe who go on about sovereignty when during COVID she was willing to give up her people's sovereignty to the white man, all in the name of health, because she was part of a political party where that was their stance. I wonder if today, when she was on her own, if she'd still take those.
And we heard those stories firsthand in Alice Springs. This is not stuff that we saw online or something. We heard these stories firsthand.
From kind of. You remember that lady? She was pro the voice. That one that was telling us all about racist policies. She was a left wing Aboriginal from Alice Springs that was discussing about these policies and saying how racist it was during COVID. Anyways, let's watch what's happening with our good friend Lydia.
Well, this is what you wanted. You wanted to shut me down.
I can't help but laugh at the way she talks. So.
This building behind us is where it all began in 1901. The racist constitution come out of this building. It's caused nothing but pain and misery for my people in this country. The referendum is an act of genocide against my people, and the Prime Minister knows exactly what he's doing.
Lydia Thorpe has reacted to
this is what I was talking about.
Posted today. She's in the last 20 minutes referred to the referendum as genocide. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Look, I think people need to be respectful during this debate. It is important that
but he liked Ray Martin's powerful speech.
Respectful with each other.
I'll play this as well.
After they kill my people, so where is my support? Fuck off, you. Where is my protection in this country?
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Somebody goes, "My daughter's here."
Oh, really?
That's what I thought. I heard.
I mean, look, she is known for these type of outbursts. I mean, this is not
super classy,
surprising the way in manner in which she's acting. But this kind of shows you this massive divide that we're seeing, and Albanese is having to answer to this as well, because we are seeing this all these different ideas of Australia and different ideas of our history colliding together at this moment. And Lydia Thorpe, this sovereign, I think a lot of people might even misunderstand it, but if I was in Lydia Thorpe's shoes and I was someone that truly believed that these people are my oppressors, and I truly believed in this idea of sovereignty that she believes in, I understand why it would be hard for someone like her to cooperate with this voice to parliament thing.
But it's very easy for her to go and take a paycheck every month.
That's a massive contradiction with Lydia Thorpe, because she sits in the Parliament House,
and she's also half white,
and she has also sworn allegiance to the Crown, even though she put on a whole show about it. She still did that. So there's a massive contradiction here with Lydia Thorpe. So I think a lot of this is just theatrics. She is very passionate about her cause, and I do kind of believe that she truly believes some of these things. But the manner in which she carries herself, I think, is unbecoming of a senator. I've said this many times for other behavior that she's done. Like, if anyone else, Craig, you were in Parliament, if anyone else behaved like this, spoke about a member of Parliament outside of Parliament, or commented about something like this, or said these type of things, what would happen?
If you're from the left side of politics, the further you have to be from the very, very far left side to be able to get away with that sort of stuff. Look, also to remember, if there is an Indigenous, if this voice did get up, you'd have another 20-odd activists, Indigenous activists down in Canberra, and Lydia Thorpe would be only one of them. She's got her sort of smick that she goes on with to try and get votes, right? She's got a little bit of a monopoly in that space down there in Parliament at the moment. The last thing she wants to have to share the platform with 28 others sort of talking the same sort of stuff. She's obviously trying to find appeal to sort of some group of people. But you're right, a member of the Senate should not be going around using that language.
I didn't think of it from that point of view. He makes a good point. It's like, because she's so dishonest about her positions, and there's always something in it for her, that it makes so much sense. The last thing she wants is a whole team of Aboriginal voices in Parliament, where then she loses that monopoly. That's her shtick. But the other thing it shows, which is what we saw at the No rally in Sydney, is that the Aboriginal community, whatever you want to call it, the Indigenous community, they're so divided on this issue. They don't even know if they want it.
Yeah.
So why should I have to vote on something, or why should I vote yes to something that they're divided on whether they want or not?
100%. Yeah.
It's because it's certainly, look, it's not going to change anything. Like, this is just tokenism. It is not going to change anything. If they want to change anything, they could change a million things today. Everybody knows what the issues are. Just go to Alice Springs for an hour. You'll know you can already do things to fix it, right? You could listen to Jacinta Price on some of the solutions. You could listen to people that actually live and work, not activists like Lydia Thorpe from inner city Melbourne. We're talking about the people that actually live and breathe it, and talk to the locals like we did in Alice Springs. You'll know that you'll have things to try within hours. It's not going to happen. So it's not going to change anything. And the fact is that the activist movement is not going to stop there. They're not going to say, oh, good, we got the voice. Now we can move on. This is fixed. This is just one step to the next step. Look at New Zealand. Look what happened across the district. Like, no, they're never happy. There's no point at which they go, oh, yeah, that's it, cool. No, it starts here, goes to, treaty, truth, reparations. It's never enough. At what point, you go overseas when you go traveling to third world countries, and you feel really bad when these beggars come up, and you feel like, gosh, and then suddenly, like, you get swarmed by them, and there's more, and it never ends. That's literally the way you look at it, is that when they see blood, they're going to come.
A couple of points to make. Firstly, I think we should actually thank Mr. Albanese for putting this referendum on, because what it's shown, that if the conservative side of politics fights and sticks on principle, that you can move the dial on where people sit on issues. For so long, we saw under the Morrison government, and the real era of the Morrison government was everything was poll driven. So it's what's popular, what's going to make us popular tomorrow, rather than these are the set of principles we stand and we fight by. We hold these up, and if they're unpopular today, we'll go out and we'll argue the case. We'll argue the case about why we believe in them. They abandoned all that, and it was just they thought they couldn't move the dial. But this voice referendum has shown that you can change if you have a chance at reasonable and fair and rational debate, you can change the public's perception. As you said, we've gone from like 70% support for the voice down to look like 35%. The support has absolutely collapsed on it.
It's tightening up. It's apparently tightening up a little bit now, but it's
we'll
still.
See. Look, I think a 6-0. If I was having a bet, I'd go 6-0 in every single state. The no case will get up. The other thing I think that's worthwhile noting is how this is how this is a chance for a great. This should be a great day if the yes case gets up. And all these no people running around. Won't it be terrible when the yes case loses? Will be looked around the world upon as terrible. Now we should say if the no vote gets up, this is a great day for the unity of our nation. When we tell every Indigenous kid and all Australians that you are all equal under the Constitution and under the law. That should be a great day for this nation, to set aside the segregation and separation policies of the past. The other thing that should be a great day is that during the COVID period, we really lost, I think you want to call our vibe as Australians. We've been so long been known as a a nation of rugged individualists, of people that had this disdain, this healthy disdain for pompous authority. That was the Australia that I sort of grew up in and believed in. But during COVID, we just rolled over and we just followed what authority told us to do. So many people. But when you've got such lineup for the yes case, you've got effectively most of the major political parties. I know here in New South Wales, you've got the opposition leader, Mr. Speakman, on the yes case. You've got Matt Keane on the yes case. So the Liberals here in New South Wales are all on board with the yes case. You've got the Labor Party, the Greens, you've got the Teals, you've got the big banks, you've got the miners, you've got the big retailers, the Woolworths and Coles, you've got even Pfizer are on board, the big pharmaceutical companies. You've got the councils, local councils. You drive around the streets of Sydney.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And you've seen all the brochures.
City of Melbourne.
I've seen that tripped me out when I was in Sydney because it's so in your face. Those signs, City of Sydney votes yes,
but even
or whatever.
Here,
even here, it's a bit more subtle here. But
as a taxpayer, as a ratepayer here in Melbourne or in Sydney, how do they get away with that crap?
They're putting your rates up. But I say, but against all that, and then you got the sporting clubs, all the big sporting organisations, even the rugby union. Has been out supporting the Yes campaign. The AFL, the Rugby League, the netballers, all of them are supporting. So if against that institutional power, that Australia still turns out and says, no, we're going to look at this, we're going to reject it, we're not going to be lectured to by celebrities and the big end of town elites, that will restore a lot of what I believe Australia is about. And that's about that we're strong individualists. We can look at issues, we can debate them, we can make our mind up without being a whole lot of sheep, which is what happened, sadly, during COVID.
There you go, Benji. That's a real.
That's the real.
That's the real. That was perfectly
And I think that's actually a great point to end our discussion on as well.
Yeah, I think, look, just one question. Like, you've been in politics for a long time. Why would he even take up this referendum now when the odds are generally, looking historically, you're up against it. You're not going to win it. It's very hard to get a referendum up. I think it's 8 out of 44 have gotten up. Was he that arrogant because the country's entire, basically, Labor?
Well, Albo's much smarter than all these leaders in the past. He would have thought he's much smarter. He would have looked at the polls. He would have thought this is an easy one to get up. He says, what we can do, anyone that says no, we can stamp on them and call them racist. They'll all be hiding in the cupboard. No one will vote no. We'll get everyone on board, and I'll be seen as this great leader that has brought in the voice. That's what he's gambled. I think there's actually a case.
Yeah. I guess in the beginning he was right. When it was 70%, I remember when it first came out and it was the first announced, everybody was like, this is getting up.
And I must admit, I thought, after what I'd seen during COVID, with everyone, the majority rolling over, I thought there's no chance of this being beat. And I stood up and I said, 4 years ago, I said that I'm the record 4 years ago saying this is divisive. I'm going to campaign against it. And it was like, how dare you? You must be like a crazy. Not only are you racist, but you're crazy to even go on the record and saying you're against this because now we're going to smear you forever. That was the tactic and what they had planned. Look, I think if this referendum goes down 6-0, I think there should be calls for Mr. Albanese to resign. Not only the cost, the waste of money, the $450 million waste that is going to cost the taxpayer, but it has put
that could have gone
many sections of our society,
Indigenous
a
communities.
lot of division.
That's right.
A lot of division amongst a lot of communities. It was completely unnecessary. And I think there's a case of Albanese gets this so wrong. What's his judgment on so many other issues going forward? Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. It's kind of torn at the fabric of our society.
100%.
This has been a long time. People are just talking about race all the time and differences between us. It's become very apparent in our discussions.
And it's become
everywhere. It's all about race.
Yeah, and it's become okay to be racist against Indigenous people who have the wrong think wrong, wrong thought.
Exactly.
It's the most bizarre thing where all the biggest activists for anti-racism have become openly racist.
Well, they're saying that they're the wrong kind of black people. Literally, that's their approach, right? I see it all the time.
And they say it out loud. They use racial slurs.
Yeah.
The left that used to campaign, that would stand there and call me a Nazi for questioning immigration policy, for example. Now they're suddenly okay with calling people like Jacinta Price and what's his name?
Warren Mundine.
Warren Mundine.
Yeah.
They call them all sorts of racial slurs because they're the wrong kind of black. And don't get them started on Rukshan.
Well, they say things about me as well. But I wanted to just end on saying that, early voting is happening. Everyone that's watching out there, I think it's 900K votes already counted. But if you do go to the polls, early voting, you will notice there's a lot more yes volunteers around there.
Everywhere.
There is, like, at some booths, I've seen some video, there's about 20 or 30 of them swarming, and there's maybe one no volunteer there. So if there's anything that's maybe giving the yes an upper hand, I think the some of the pre-polling or the early voting centers are not really being manned by the no side. Now, I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have, but I reckon if you're interested and you care about what's happening in this democracy, because there's an issue here where I think people are afraid to express their feelings about 100%. No. Like I walk around the streets here in the inner city, Melbourne, and there's yes signs on so many windows. So I think people are even reluctant to maybe volunteer or help out. But if you're in the mind frame of being someone that's passionate about some of the things we've discussed today and voting no, I think potentially volunteering or helping out at some of these booths might be a good thing.
Why do you have a yes thing on your window?
Just to protect my building.
That's right.
It's like from the Bible where they painted blood over the door.
No, just in just in case the door knockers come, the Yes campaign door knockers come. I heard they're very hard to get rid of. But no, look, I definitely think there's a few shortcomings there, Craig, in terms of what I'm just seeing on the streets in terms of the voting. They're being swarmed. Like if you go to one of these things, you will get swarmed with pamphlets.
But it was even before that. You remember when I was doing the video, the streeters in the city?
Well, they've been active for a while.
They're everywhere, and I asked them why, and they said that the No's stopped campaigning. And there could be some sort of truth to that. Everybody's so overconfident. Like, why do I need a campaign? But even before even in the beginning of the campaign, it was always yes campaigners and not no's, because it's hard to get people to go out there and give out flyers when you're being recorded and labelled and put online as a racist.
Yeah,
and all this. People are scared.
There is a disadvantage there. That's what I'm saying. People that would traditionally maybe volunteer for a cause are a bit scared to go out there.
Which is very, very sad in a democracy. And that's why I think that the polls, when you look at the polls, if the polls are wrong in any direction, they're going to be greatly understating what the true no vote is.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
That was the tactic of the yes, to label anyone that voted no as a bad person, as a racist. And the reason you see so many of these people out in the yes T-shirts, they get this great inner glow that it's a great virtue signalling, and they get to feel as though they were uplifted. Oh, I helped the yes campaign, without giving a thought of how they're actually dividing the country. The one thing I'd encourage people to make sure you do vote. There's been some craziness online with people saying, "Oh, the best way is not to vote at all." Like that's telling people that would likely vote no not to vote is madness. It actually helps the yes campaign. So make sure you get out there.
Yeah.
Make sure make sure you get out there and you do vote, and certainly don't be intimidated at the polls when you get swamped by a whole lot of people. Yes, campaign, and why you would even need to hand out a how to vote card on this thing. It's not as though you've got to get the numbers from 1 to 10 and you've got to put them in some order like you do in the House of Reps. You've got to remember people fill in every square. You either write yes or no. Why do you need all these people on the on the polling booths anyway, other than trying to intimidate and put pressure?
Well, they're trying to get the undecideds. I know. They're just trying to get people who aren't maybe too aware of what's going on.
Do you want to play something?
Well, I just wanted to play this video to finish up on. This is Sally McManus. I think she's a union leader of some sort. And they're planning a 1 million phone call campaign where you call 5 family members. And
you know what? I didn't watch it with sound because I saw you playing it before, and I was cringing on her.
It's worse with sound.
That's a she/her. Yeah, I don't know.
No comments. Let's just play the video.
I want you to be part of making 1 million calls for yes. So no, you don't have to make 1 million calls. You don't have to make 5 of them. And how are you going to do that? Just go to your contacts and call your friends and family. If all of us who are supporting the yes make just 5 calls to the people who
Rukshan.
we love the most,
Vote no.
well,
Vote
we'll
no.
get this referendum won. So
We'll make 1
be
million
part of
and
it.
1.
1 million calls for yes. Next 2 weeks, call your friends and family. If you can do more than
Look at the
5, even
movements.
better.
That
look-
is so hectic. Play
Someone was saying the Wiggles.
it, yeah, play it without sound a second, because that's how I saw it before. And look, holy crap, that should be a dance. Somebody, hopefully, TikTok, do something with that.
No, but someone was saying it's like one of those old telemarketing commercials where they're trying to sell you like a toaster or something.
Yeah, and you get, and if you do it today, you will get an extra
But there's no
3 virtue signaling points.
Yeah, this is like hardcore virtue signaling. There's no real reality to anything. There's no emotion there. It's all
Call your friends.
It's all just like call 5 people, call 1 million people, blah blah blah. But look,
On that note, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Craig Kelly. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Have you got anything exciting we can look forward to? Any court cases coming up?
Yeah, look, a couple of things we're looking at. On the I know I've got to be careful with this, but on the COVID issues, we know the government is running their own inquiry, and we know it's going to be a whitewash. We're at the moment organising an independent citizens COVID inquiry, where we're looking at a couple of retired federal court judges that will hear that inquiry, that will be running parallel to the government's inquiry, and will be hearing all the issues and hearing all the arguments that the government's inquiry won't be running. We think that's going to be really important. That will get a lot of attention. Both
Is Dan
in Australia
Andrews willing to sit in that inquiry?
Well,
he's offered to go to the other inquiry as long as they don't talk about anything he did.
We know that the government's inquiry is not going to analyse things like the conduct of the police. Were the police militarised in Victoria? That surely is a legitimate question. Did the police? What about the use of rubber bullets on the streets? Is that something that should we have regulations in Australia about when police would actually use rubber bullets? That should be part of the inquiry. Some of the medical treatments that were used in the hospitals, again without mentioning any words, what was the adequacy of those? Were there certain treatments that were blocked?
I can't wait to watch this inquiry and cover this inquiry solely on Rumble and X.
Yeah.
We can broadcast. We can broadcast this basically across as many media platforms as we can. We can do it live.
Yeah.
And we can put together highlight reels of it and have discussions of it, and we can actually hear the evidence from real experts of what the government's not going to cover.
We're looking forward to it.
That sounds
We're
great.
absolutely looking forward to the details, because Rebel News will be more than happy to cover that one.
Yep.
Again, thank you for your time, and thank you to all the viewers, if you and listeners listening on your favorite podcast app. If you want to catch up on other episodes, again, theopposition.show or www.theopposition.show. We're trying to educate people that .show is actually like
A
.com.
domain. It's a domain.
It's a domain.
Domain.
Whose genius idea was it to do
That was actually your genius idea. But again, guys, thank you for joining us from Australia, from around the world, on all the different platforms. Whether you're watching on X, to Rumble, to Facebook and YouTube, Spotify. Thank you so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Next week, we are planning to do an episode, and also, should we tell people on the referendum?
Yeah, why not? We'll do a live...
We'll do a live referendum night style coverage. We're not exactly sure of the times, but we'll figure all that out.
We'll let you know by next week. We'll run it live, reactions live, and hopefully celebrations live. At a certain point, we're going to have to pull out the whiskies.
Yes, depending. Oh, well, regardless.
Either way. It's either going to be drinking out of happiness or drinking our sorrows down with our constitutional rights.
That's right. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely night.